If you keep my commandments, you will remain in my love. At first glance, this seems threatening, and as though Jesus is telling us that if we're not perfect, we will not be loved. But that is only until you read the verse directly following. I have told you this so that my joy may be in you, and that your joy may be complete. Jesus refers to his joy, the joy that comes with knowing Jesus, the joy that cannot be found in anything. We are instructed to follow God's commandments because when we do, we feel the love of our God. Far too often, we try to feel loved by things or people that aren't good for us. The beauty of God is that when we seek him, when we actually make an effort to try and follow his commandments, we feel the joy and love we are seeking. Away from God's love, not because we are no longer loved, but because we are doing everything in our power to suppress God's love. Because we might be mad at God, we might think that God isn't listening, or he might just be too tired to try. We never stop being loved by God. We are held in his hand, and he isn't going to let go, because God cares for us, and it's like having a friend. When you're bonding with someone like a friend, you're closer to them when you talk, but when you don't, you become distant. Love and care for somebody never disappears, but you don't feel the presence of love as strongly when you aren't actively making an effort to have a relationship. When we choose to avoid relationship with God, we are still loved, but we don't feel the love as strongly. As someone who struggled with their faith for a long time, as someone who made an effort to avoid God, I can testify that when you choose to run from God, the joy and love in your life dissipates. During this period of my life, I couldn't bring myself to perform basic human functions. I stopped washing my face. I stopped being able to fall asleep at night. Most importantly, I stopped praying. But then when I asked my best friend how he was able to keep it together all the time, he told me that it was all because of Jesus. I decided to come back to God because it was a last resort. Everything was falling apart, so I might as well try it. Then it worked. When I gave my problems to God, when I stopped trying to control, that's when it worked. I didn't become a perfect person because perfect doesn't exist other than Jesus. I am so far from being perfect, but that doesn't change the fact that I'm so much better and so much happier now that I feel the constant love of God. When we admit our inability to go through life alone, when we humbly return to God, when we are the prodigal that comes home, that's when we feel joy like never before. My happiness after struggling with my faith has been 1,000 times greater than ever before, and I'd like to think that has everything to do with God. My joy isn't necessarily coming from happiness in the world, but from my soul. The love that the Holy Spirit has brought into my heart is the foundation for the immense joy I feel. Part of that comes from the fact that some of the most rewarding things you can do includes helping others. This is also identified as Jesus' commandment to us, to love others as he loved us. Because there is no greater joy than to lay down one's life for one's friends. We aren't expected to die for our friends, but Jesus did. He came to earth and loved everyone. Then he died for his friends, showing the ultimate sacrifice and setting the ultimate example. Love each other as I have loved you. Jesus loved unconditionally. He loved his friends as much as he loved his enemies. We're called to do the same thing. We're designed to show each other love because we were made in God's image. God showed his image when Jesus came to earth. Jesus was loving in every situation, and we should do the same. Jesus showed us the perfect way to love. One of my favorite songs is called Reckless Love, and it says, "All the overwhelming, never-ending, reckless love of God. It chases me down, fights till I'm found, leaves the 99. I couldn't earn it, I don't deserve it." I think that this is the most amazing representation of God's love because it shows that we're all so imperfect and undeserving of God's unconditional, reckless love, but we're loved anyway. There are so many people in my life that might not deserve my love, but I try to love them because that's what Jesus did, and that's what God does. That's what we're instructed to do, because if we only love those that we think are deserving of our love, how is that different than God loving us? We don't deserve the incredible grace and love that comes from God, but that doesn't change the fact that nothing can divide us from God. No valley of shadow can keep us from the love of God. So why wouldn't we try to emulate that reckless and selfless caring? I won't stand here and try to convince you that you will ever be able to cut hatred out of your life. We'll fail, because we're all too human, a slave to sin. But that doesn't mean we can't try. We can wake up and make a valiant effort, and though we will fail, we'll go to sleep that night with love in our hearts. Because when we prioritize love towards everyone, we feel the love and joy we're meant to experience.
Thank you, Samantha. That was really good. The next verse, verse 13, begins with a great proclamation. No one has greater life than to give up one's life for one's friends. Indeed, Jesus did die shortly after he said this, for in the next verse, he explains that we are his friends as long as we continue in his love. I don't call you servants any longer, because servants don't know what their master is doing. Instead, I call you friends, because everything I heard from my Father I have made known to you. This message to the apostles is clearly meant to console them in his parting, but it means so much more if you look at it from a different point of view. Jesus shared all he heard from God with his disciples. Then they wrote the Bible. By reading the Bible, we ourselves are learning Jesus' experience and his message. In this way, we are all Jesus' friends. Yes, we don't know his entire plan, but we can comprehend his thoughts, morals, and actions, and through these, we understand our purpose. We're not simply ordered like servants, but instead we're given an example in Jesus and a command in verse 12 to base our actions in love. He says in the next verse that you didn't choose me, I chose and appointed you, so that you could go and produce fruit, and so that your fruit could last. This is an incredible promise. Jesus is promising that the things we do in the world will have value. Our actions to help others and love one another will have an impact for time to come. As a result, Jesus promises that whatever you ask the Father in my name, he will give you. The apostles were called by Jesus before they joined him. Andrew, John, and James were mending fishing nets when Jesus called them over. He only requested to talk to them for a little while, but after speaking with him, they resolved to join him on all of his journeys afterward. Matthew, a tax collector, one of the most villainous things in Jewish society at that time, was first invited over by Jesus. But every one of them, though only asked to stay a little while, decided to take that opportunity. We are not forced to follow Jesus either. We are not like servants, ordered and told what to do, nor are we following Jesus because of a threat. In the Middle Ages, people mostly obeyed the church because it threatened them with an eternity in hell. But that isn't what Jesus said. Jesus invites us to go and produce fruit. We may ignore the request, truly, friendship is a choice, but if we do, not only will whatever you ask the Father in my name be given to us, but our fruit will last. The fruit of our actions in the world, and also the fruit of the Spirit, love, joy, peace, etc. Obviously, this doesn't mean that as long as you are spreading good, you will be able to ask for whatever you want. In James 4:3, it is made clear that you ask and do not receive because you ask wrongly, to spend it on your pleasures. But if you are following Jesus' example and working to make the world a better place, you will find the assistance you need from God and others. I don't know what I am called to do in my life, but these verses give me hope that if I follow the examples of the apostles and I join Jesus, then my actions will provide a lasting good.